Welcome to the PHYA Academy video newsletter. This week we're talking about valor. Now, valor is often understood as a kind of bravery, a kind of courage, a kind of resolve, a kind of strength, and it certainly is, but it's one that requires a little bit of attention because it is a kind of courage, a kind of bravery that unites all of our being into one grand display or one grand stand, if you will. When we look at the definition, the dictionary definition of valor, we get this definition: strength of mind, spirit, or character that enables one to encounter danger with firmness. Oh, I really like this definition because it combines the moral, the intellectual, and the physical. And at PHYA Academy, we adamantly believe that is the equation towards reaching our best potential. So valor becomes a part of a display of the best elements of ourselves through the unison of morality, intellectual prowess, and physical competency. And when you think about valor, when you think about this notion of courage, right, that now enables you because you are strong in your character, in your spirit, in your personality traits, that when you encounter a kind of a danger, it could be an intellectual danger in terms of a disagreement or an argument. It could be physical danger if we're thinking about maybe endurance sports or potentially facing down an illness or a sickness. That we need all of our faculties to be working together, right? If you're nervous about going into maybe an argument with somebody or you're in an argument, you know that your body reacts in a specific way. You know, your heart rate will elevate. You might start sweating. You're probably going to start talking really fastly. Your brain is kind of all over the place. And so those who can control their bodies are able to be in charge of their spirit and their soul, to then be able to use their minds when confronting whatever kind of danger is in front of us. And when we're talking about the realm of athletics, we are talking particularly about physical challenges. And for the ancient Greeks, who gave us organized competitive athletics and this notion that they are at the pinnacle of our intellectual, moral, and physical development, and that athletic competition represents the best qualities of a person, it is through that unison of those three elements: body, mind, and soul. And this is one of the reasons why the ancient Greek athletic culture focused so much on the notion of risk, on sacrifice, and on struggle as the crucial avenues towards acquiring virtue and becoming the best version of oneself. You know, I've got a picture here of a typical Greek stadium. These are not the spectacular stadiums that we see in ancient Rome or in our modern world. These are uncomfortable stadiums without seating. There's no shade. You're out in the sun. So there's even the sense that those who struggle to watch the athletes have to endure and have to risk. And I've got here an excerpt from Pindar. Now, Pindar was one of the ancient Greek world's greatest poets. Many consider him to be the greatest Greek poet. And he's famous for writing celebratory praise poems about Olympic champions. And in Isthmian 5, where he is talking about a particular champion, we get a sense of the link between risk, valor, and the importance of athletic performance, athletic competition. So here I'll quote Pindar. And in athletic contests, someone who has wreathed his hair with many garlands has achieved long for fame, when he has been victorious with his hands or with the swiftness of his feet. But the valor of men is judged by gods, and there are only two things that cultivate the sweetest flower of life in blossoming prosperity: to have good fortune and a noble reputation. So what does Pindar mean by this good fortune and noble reputation, and that the valor of men is judged by the gods? Well, in ancient Greek mythology, the gods dictate the lives of men, right? The gods force men, the gods direct men, and men are in somewhat control of their actions, but the gods also have their hand to play. What's fun about athletics is in Greek mythology and in Greek culture, it represented a moment of literal transcendence. So the mortal athlete, upon the moment of physical perfection and becoming that athletic champion or athletic hero, actually surpasses their own mortality and temporarily touches the fingertips of the gods. So it's this convergence between physical risk in terms of displaying oneself in performance, in competition, right? And you may not necessarily be risking injury, although athletics is certainly not something that's great for your physical health. And lots of ancient Greek athletes died in competition or were severely injured. But even the risk of your reputation, win or lose, compete with honor or compete in shame. That physical risk, public performance, and achievement gives us this sense of the display for the collection of virtues that are necessary for athletic excellence. And athletic excellence as a virtue represented all of the best qualities that Greek citizens should aspire to. And this is something we see all the way into the modern period when it comes to our sporting culture and the relationship between physical courage, risk, sacrifice, and legacy and celebration when it comes to these athletic examples. So I want to talk a little bit about Bert Trautmann and his escapades in the 1956 FA Cup final. If you do not know a little bit about Bert Trautmann, there's a lot of really neat sort of like video series or sort of like video stories that show a little bit of this. But essentially, in the 1956 FA Cup final, which is sort of the English national professional soccer title, Trautmann makes a really sort of a risky play. He dives at the feet of an opposing player to make a save, and he ends up in a pretty bad spot in terms of a collision. His neck is badly twisted. It's sort of like off to the side a little bit. You can see in this photo here he is walking off with his teammates. He plays the final 17 minutes of the game, making a couple of really key and incredible stops to preserve his team, Manchester City's grasp of the FA Cup. His neck is visibly crooked. He can't move his head. He goes to the banquet that night. He goes to sleep. He thinks, I'll just sleep off this neck pain. 3 days later, it's found that he's actually dislocated 5 of his vertebrae, with one cracked completely in 2. So here we have a soccer goalie playing with a broken neck in order to preserve his team's championship. Pretty incredible. What's even more incredible is Trautmann's sort of personal story of how he even became a goalie in England, because he was born in Germany and flew for the Luftwaffe in World War II. He was captured 3 times. He managed to escape capture from the Soviets and the French, but in 1945 he was captured by the British, taken to a POW camp in Great Britain, and rather than returning to Germany, he decided to stay in Great Britain, was an amateur football player in 1948, playing goalie, and then he was signed to Manchester City in 1949. So what's really neat about Trautmann's story, not only is he displaying this excellent physical courage, this valor in the face of extreme danger, and the bravery that he has in staying in the game, relates to his martial prowess, right? To his ability as a warrior, his ability as a soldier. And when we move back into history, talking about the ancient Greeks and why they seem to value physical courage in an athletic capacity, it has to do with the athlete's link to the warrior spirit, and specifically to the ancient Greek hoplite warriors. And one of the things that people in the sport academics, the sport humanities, we like to talk about is the connection between sport and war, right? Are they similar? Are they the same? The ancient Greeks believed it was the same. For them, physicality in war was the same as physicality in sport. What differentiated heroism in athletics versus heroism in warfare was Greeks used to fight Greeks, but athletics was a unification of all the Greeks. So when the Greeks compete against each other in warfare, it's particular. When the Greeks compete against each other in athletics, it's universal to Greek culture, which elevated the status of the athletes above victorious generals and soldiers. In ancient Greece, you were not allowed to build statues for victorious soldiers and generals, but every single victorious athlete at Olympia had statues made of them in their home cities. Okay, so this should give you a really interesting sense of the importance of athletic performance. And we even see the ancient Olympics merging the two together. In 520 BC, we've got the introduction of the hoplodromatos, which is a race in full hoplite armor. And this was introduced at Olympia. So you can see on this vase here, this Attic black figure amphora from the 4th century. We have athletes running with shields and helmets, oftentimes with armor and spear and sword as well. Imagine today in the modern Olympics, a military style obstacle course with your fatigues and carrying a 70-pound sack, right? That's what this was. And this gives us a sense, you know, and I just talked about why they built statues for athletics or athletes, pardon me, but they wouldn't build statues for generals. Sport becomes this abstraction for martial values, right? And this is where we oftentimes think of valor, right? Valor is something a soldier possesses in battle, right? To face potential death or certain death with a bravery or resolve or with a strength. And so when we think about Bert Trautmann, when we think about the connection between risk, struggle, sacrifice, and the martial prowess and values that are being expressed by these ancient Greek athletes, what we're really being educated on is the importance of being accountable and being, pardon me, and being responsible. Because when we think about valor, when we think about athletics, we are talking again about the display in the ancient Greek mind of the most excellent virtues that one can possibly possess. You gain strength from the combination of body, mind, and soul. And athletics is the best activity that brings those into combination and allows one to work simultaneously in all three in aim of achievement, of excellence, of perfection, of transcendence, of touching the gods. So what does it mean for us today? Well, if you understand the importance of athletic exertion, that when we work on our bodies, we're not just engaged in a vanity exercise of getting big muscles or having a low resting heart rate so we can brag to our doctors about our healthy heart, right? When you are in the gym, when you're exercising, when you're playing sports, when you're out on a nature walk, when you're gardening, when you're doing something strenuous and physical with purpose and with meaning and with understanding of why you're doing it, you can use that training as inspiration to find strength in your moments of weakness. That's what athletics does. That's why athleticism in the ancient Greek world was so tied to this notion of physical courage, valor, and struggle. Because if you're able to train yourself to overcome in one area of body, mind, and spirit, you can use it to then overcome the other two. And this works similarly for moral strength and intellectual strength, encouraging your physical strength. But it also means that when we are engaging in physical exertion, we are also engaging in the training of our intellectual and our moral foundations. And so why should I, you watching this video, me talking to you, we're in a conversation. Why should we want to encourage personal valor today? Well, again, it gives us this courage to face difficult challenges in life and to overcome them, whatever we may be facing. Could be something that's serious, could be something that might seem superficial, but when you accomplish it, right, it becomes really meaningful, really purposeful. And this is why we praise and celebrate the athlete in the first place. When I hear that story of Bert Trautmann, my first thought isn't why wouldn't he have just gone off? My first thought is I understand why he had to stay in the net. Not so much because he disregards his physical health or his physical safety, but by facing that danger, right? He is able to prove to himself a lot more about what he's capable of than if he had mainly just focused on bodily health, right? Oftentimes, that disconnect between body, mind, and spirit leaves us sort of promoting one over the other, right? And you see this a lot with people. Why do you go to the gym? Why do you put yourself through that pain? If I'm running out in the forest, which I often do, sometimes I get sore hips, right? And so if someone notices me like maybe stretching, they'll say, well, are you sore? And I'll say, yeah, I was just out running in the forest and my hips are sore. And they said, oh, why do you do that to yourself? You just, you're hurting your body. Oftentimes it's come from people who don't exercise, so they don't understand why that kind of a pain is positive. But I think it also speaks to this larger disconnect in society between our bodies, our minds, and our souls. And so that's why we should want to encourage personal valor through athleticism, through our bodies, because it doesn't just stop at our bodies. It really does nourish our strength in all facets of our life, and we need that strength. We need it because life is hard, life is difficult, and we have obstacles to overcome, we have challenges to face, and we have achievements to strive for and to reach. Okay, thanks everybody. Let's talk again next week.